Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to chat about my past week, and I'm also going to be reviewing my best friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, while also doing a makeup look inspired by Miss Abby herself. Let's get into the video. Hi, how are you? I feel like it's been a minute since I sat down to film. We filmed really early last week, so we're later in the week this time. I am still trying to figure out my TBR for July. I don't know if I'm going to participate necessarily in Summerween, but I will if I have time. I might have kind of a busy week coming up, but we'll see. So, to catch you up on my week, I drove to my mom's house on Wednesday of last week, which was a little bit of a drive because if you don't know, my mom lives in Northern California and I currently live in Southern California, so a little bit of a trek. It was just me and Rocky on the drive. My husband actually stayed here to watch our little kitty cat. He's like laying on my foot. So the drive up north is kind of a long drive. I don't know if you've done it in a normal car before, but a normal car would take you about 5.5 to 6 hours, I would say. But my husband and I own a Tesla, and if you've ever been in a Tesla before, you do have to go charge it pretty regularly. So with the charge, it takes anywhere from like 6.5 to 7 hours, which isn't terrible. It depends on how much charge you start with. So normally it takes us 2 charge sessions of about 30 minutes, but it's not too bad. It makes you stop and go use the restroom and go get food or something, which kind of breaks up the trip, which actually makes it a little bit more enjoyable, I think. If you can't tell by the hair, we are definitely doing an 80's inspired look. The blue eyeshadow might also give it away. Cool, cool, cool. I love when you finally sit down to film and there's people throwing trash in our bins outside and planes. Super fun. Love this. So I got to my mom's place on Wednesday, but I went and actually had some drinks and dinner over at my friend's place. She lives in this like really cute little charming town, kind of out in the boonies, but it was nice. Had a couple glasses of wine, then went and had sushi, which for a small little quaint town, I was impressed that the sushi was actually pretty good. I didn't do a lot when I was at my mom's. I got to see my brother and my sister-in-law. I was just kind of there for some family stuff. And I got to see my little baby nephew, which I was very excited about. He's so big now. And he's like super expressive and he's like smiling and giggling. He's so cute. I also had lunch with my dad, which was nice. We went to this little diner called Babs. While I was at my mom's house, though, I did go to a couple bookstores because, you know, I just can't help myself. I did get a couple of books and I will do a haul, but I'll do that in another video. So make sure to check out that one. It'll be coming out soon. I mostly pretty much just spent time in my mom's garden, outside when it wasn't blazing hot. It was, I think it hit around 104, 105 degrees one of those days, and it was brutal. But everything in my mom's garden is like super lush and green, and she has a bunch of roses that are all blooming and they're all so pretty and they smell wonderful. If you've never smelled an old world rose smell, that one's my favorite. It smells so good. My mom also feeds, there's like some neighborhood cats. I think there's about 4 of them. And 3 of them are black cats, and then one of them is a gray cat that I call Miss Polly. but the 3 black cats, they're all like mean and terrorize the neighborhood, but I find them very charming. Yet another one. Also in my mom's garden, she has a blueberry tree or bush, one of those, and they're finally ripe, and you can pick them pretty much right off the tree, which is so cool if you've never just picked fruit off a tree or like vegetables off the vine or something. I think that's one of the coolest things about gardening, is just go in your backyard, grab something to eat, and it's good to go. So moving on to the book. This week I read a couple of books, but I mainly wanted to talk about Grady Hendrix's My Best Friend's Exorcism. It was so good. Spoiler alert, I really loved it. So the best way that I can describe this book is if it's like Mean Girls, but like if Regina George was possessed by a demon, and that's the reason why she was so awful in the film. So it's set in the 1980s, and it follows Abby and her best friend Gretchen. They've been friends since they were like 10 years old, but the current story is told when they're like teenagers and it's their sophomore year in high school. So there's 4 girls in their little clique. It's Abby and Gretchen, of course, and then there is Margaret and Glee. They have their own little clique in high school, and so in the story, they all go to Margaret's cabin in the woods, just doing a little girls' night. I won't go into too much detail about the plot of the book, but obviously you can guess based on the title of the book that Gretchen gets possessed by a demon, and Abby has to figure out how to get rid of the demon. So I saw a couple of reviews for this book, and it seems like it's kind of a split, like 50-50. I saw a couple of reviews that really liked it and enjoyed it, and then a couple of them that just didn't really enjoy it at all. I obviously really enjoyed it. I think I'm probably one of the like target markets for like Grady Hendrix. I really loved the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I really enjoyed that one. I read that a couple years ago, I think. But I loved it. I think his stuff seems to read almost like a movie, which makes sense that Amazon picked up My Best Friend's Exorcism. And side note, I did watch that movie. It was not as good as the book, obviously, as a book lover. I'm going to say that, of course. But I thought it was cute. I wish there was some more like 80's music, but obviously with licensing and stuff that can get expensive. So obviously I loved the book. I feel like I was at the perfect moment to read it. I wanted something kind of fun and campy. I like horror, and I actually primarily read mostly horror and like gothic like novels, but I don't know, I was just kind of in the mood for something a little bit lighter. There is some body horror in the book, which doesn't bother me, but trigger warning, it might bother some people. The biggest theme of the book was definitely like the power of friendship, and that's not usually a theme I'm necessarily drawn to, but it was really sweet and I enjoyed it. I would definitely describe this book as more of like a PG-13 kind of book. There are some uncomfortable themes, but for the most part, it wasn't too bad. I definitely would say I wouldn't call this an R-rated, although I think the Amazon Prime video or movie is R-rated. But I think that's because there's like drugs in it, or like a short scene with drugs, which I didn't know that gets you an R rating in a movie, but maybe it does. The book itself was like really campy and fun, but I'm gonna wait for this plane. The book was really campy and like really fun, and it never fails. Grady Hendrix always finds a way to frustrate me beyond belief. Like, there is this part in the book where Abby is really isolated and people blame her for all of the stuff that's happening, when in actuality she has nothing to do with it and she's just trying to save her best friend. Which, it makes me so mad when stuff like that happens, obviously, because it's not fair. But that's part of why the book was so good, though. Also, another thing about the Amazon Prime adaptation of this book, I really felt like it missed the mark on, one, how awful Gretchen was when she was possessed. Like, she's terrible. And then two, they kind of missed the mark on how, like, isolated and, like, what it does to Abby in that, like, isolation. Because I felt like that was kind of like a pivotal part of the story. Cool. I just got this blush on my shoe. Super fun. I will say my only gripe about this book is there was a couple of instances where you're kind of like, was that necessary? Like, for example, they have this acronym where I think it's, what is it? It's DBNQ, and the girls will say it to each other. It's their version of, like, I love you, but it's DBNQ, which stands for dearly but not queerly. And you're kind of like, was that really necessary? Actually, in the Amazon show, they change it to, what was it? Lilas. So LYLAS, which is love you like a sister, which, that makes more sense. I don't know. I don't particularly think of myself as very PC, but it just seemed like kind of odd that Grady Hendrix would choose to say that, I guess. Regardless of those little tiny things, I still gave it a 5 stars. The movie's probably more like 2.5, but I definitely was super entertained. I read this book, I want to say within like 2.5 days. I was just like consumed by it. It was such a good book and it was so entertaining. It really like read like a movie, which I think is why I was like so captivated by it. We are going full on 80s with the blush. So to finish it off, no 80s teenager look is complete without a lip gloss, of course. So this is the final look. Does she scream 80s teenager? Or more 34-year-old adult pretending to be a teenager? Probably. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and be kind and try not to get possessed by a demon. Okay, bye everyone. Wait, what do you want me to say? I was born in the 80s and raised in the 90s. I don't know any 80s terms.